The comfort will lead to weakness, for sure. We celebrate convenience culture in our lives. And because of that, yes, we are becoming weaker as a species. Whether it is intellect, whether it is emotional resiliency, whether it is physical capacity.
Athletes, Navy SEALs, astronauts, what do they understand about stress that we all have to learn from?
The stress is exactly the same. It's how the body adapted to get to that stressor, and therefore the response is different. A small amount of suffering repetitively leads to an outcome which is beneficial, and that's the secret sauce.
What are some easy micro stresses that everyone can start with today?
Yeah, so maybe 4 things. The first thing can be the cold shower, skipping or delaying a meal, speak up in a meeting. Try a physical activity today which pushes you beyond what you would normally do.
What is the simplest way to identify good stress and bad stress?
So there is a digital biomarker which you can look at, and it's called stress is nature's way of allowing us to achieve or do something. We have a narrative in society where the mere mention of that word is associated with a very negative emotion. We associate stress with bad, we associate aging with bad. Aging medicine, neuroscience, longevity science, these are all different words. But what we've begun to understand at a cellular level is that...
Let's just pause. Subscribing here isn't just about supporting our channel. It's about choosing what kind of thinking you want around you regularly. So if that resonates, you know what to do. Dr. Marcus Ranney, for someone who doesn't know you, could you tell us who you are and what you do?
So I am professionally a longevity physician and high performance specialist. What that means is that I work at the cutting edge of pushing the body to extremes. So either individuals who are looking to live healthier and optimize themselves from a day-to-day perspective, or athletes, professional athletes, or weekend warriors who are looking at extracting more energy, recovering faster, performing better. These are the types of patients and clients that I typically work with. That's what I do professionally. Personally, I've always described myself that I am merely a student of the body. I love everything about the human body. It's what I've only done for the last 25, 30 years. And I'm a young dad, and I love that aspect of life as well.
Right. Thanks for coming, Dr. Marcus.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into good stress and bad stress,
Yeah,
which is the name of your book,
that's right.
can you define what is stress?
Stress is nature's way of allowing us to achieve or do something, in my opinion. We have a narrative in society where the mere mention of that word is associated with a very negative emotion. Physically, viscerally, we feel a particular way when asked to describe what it feels like to be stressed. And oftentimes that can be butterflies in the stomach, dryness in the mouth, a sense of anxiety. It's a general sense of negative sentiment associated with that word. For me, that's not how I see stress. I actually see stress as the opportunity which physiology has created through a set of specific pathways where the body can propel itself to do something of interest in that particular moment. Evolutionary, it's there to do just 3 things. We have to outrun the lion, we have to outrun the deer, and we have to compete to find a mate. That's all we really have to do in life. Everything else is secondary and made up.
If only life was so simple.
I think life can be so simple. I think we've overcomplicated
Modern
it.
life.
We've overcomplicated it. But fundamentally, we need to eat, we need to survive, and we need to reproduce. That's all nature asks us to do. And so stress exists to allow us to do those 3 things. And all of those things are short-lived or acute in sort of our terminology, and associated with a sense of completion. So that's what stress is for me.
How would you look at stress again, given that we are not in that place? We're not in nature anymore. We're not running around anymore. None of that is happening.
Yeah. So when we think about stressors in the modern life, rather than the lion and the deer and the heavy primate, we have, let's say, always on email and mobile culture, and it triggers a stress response internally, which leads and manifests to psychological distress and potentially metabolic damage. We have a culture of sort of materialism and wealth accumulation, which is creating another set of pressures on us to always achieve and always have that one thing extra. We have a physical environment which we've created, which is not conducive to how we should be living and growing in terms of air quality, water quality, soil quality, food quality, sound quality, all of these things. So yes, it does require a modern day narrative. But what I wanted to do through the effort of this book is remind people that stress is not and should not be seen as a bad thing. And when applied properly, and there are plenty of opportunities for good applications, I'm sure we'll dive into those things, then it's a tool for us to grow and be a better version of ourselves.
I like that. I mean, definitely worth exploring and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, as you said, most people say, I want no stress. I don't want stress. Could you elaborate on that?
Firstly, a life without stress wouldn't create any of the stimulus that helps us push ourselves to grow in any particular way. We need to have physical stressors applied, and we even need to have cognitive and emotional stressors applied so that we can continually evolving, building, and being better versions of ourselves. On the physical side, tend to look at aspects like heat, cold. So temperature regulation is sort of one classic example of physical stresses that can be applied. Second set of physical stresses is something as simple yet complex as movement and exercise. That itself is a physical stress to the system, which is critical for us to grow and be better. Mentally, emotionally, pushing ourselves to learn new things, to be in uncomfortable environments, to be in uncomfortable situations. These are aspects where we can learn a lot and grow from that so that we can turn out better thereafter. So for those who say, oh, I want to have a chilled out, stress-free life, the question really is then what is that you are living for or doing? Because to not have any of these things, where will that lead you? People may mean it through the lens of, oh, I don't want to have arguments in my relationships. That's fine. That's good. I mean, of course.
Or a high stress job.
Or
horrible boss.
Yeah, exactly. So these are all examples potentially of bad stressors, which we can definitely address, minimize. But what we must not extract completely are the good stressors. So that distinction is very, very important for people to appreciate.
Yeah, it's interesting because and that's what I really want to frame in this podcast, which is that everyone has some kind of stress.
Yeah.
And it's very clear, like you said, that it's natural to have stress. So what I really want to get into in this podcast is understand what are daily stressors that are destroying our lives, and what are the good stresses that we should invite into our lives and to make us stronger.
Yeah.
Everybody is looking at longevity and stress. I mean, a lot of people are looking at now, but you have spent decades of your life in these insanely high pressure environments. You led a team to Everest.
Yeah.
100 people team.
Yeah.
To understand the effects of oxygen. You've done 2 trips to the Arctic.
Yeah.
To understand the effects of, what's the temperature?
Oh, the lowest we've been in is about minus 26, minus 28 degrees Celsius.
Minus 26 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
I mean, an ice bath is 5 degrees and it's freezing. So this is minus 26 degrees.
Yeah.
To understand the effects of that on the body.
Yeah.
You've run marathons and you've worked with endurance athletes to understand that area of stress.
Yeah.
And you've worked in NASA, you worked with astronauts to understand how stress affects them as well. So for me, that's very interesting because you really have seen yourself and other people. You've studied people in the most extreme situations. What do all these people who you worked with, athletes, Navy SEALs, astronauts, explorers who climb the highest mountains, go to the coldest places, go to the deepest places in the ocean. What do they understand about stress that we all have to learn from?
Number one, that you have to train to be able to manage it. So that training is so let's take an example of high altitude, right? There are adventure trips available today that you can jump on a helicopter at Kathmandu and find yourself just sort of southwest of Everest Base Camp, a place called Kala Patthar or Gorakshep. And of course, if you go on Instagram, it'll be full of those things.
Of course.
Right? Now, I have known people who've done that, and they described to me that after a few minutes of being at that altitude, they very quickly find themselves very unwell. And therefore, you can not spend more than 10, 15 minutes and then have to return. But if you choose to do it the way we did, which was sort of land at Lukla and then make your way over 2.5, 3 weeks, you find yourself, you can thrive there and do everything there and survive there for long periods of time whilst the rest of your party is going up to summit. The difference being that, so the stress is exactly the same. It's how the body adapted to get to that stressor, and therefore the response is different. So the trained athlete understands that over a period of time, by repetitively exposing your body to increasing amounts of that stress and then allowing it to recover, your body can fight or manage a high challenge. Whereas if someone else were exposed to exactly that same stressor, the body would break down and not be able to do that. So that's something which is very important, because if we truly want to be better, do better, achieve more, grow, then there is a journey and a pathway to get there. And that involves dedication, that involves discipline, that involves a particular amount of training. So that, for me, having spent time with so many different types of athletes and high-performing individuals, depending on, doesn't matter which field of discipline they are, that's the commonality, is that there is a behavior trait that they've either been born with or they've developed over time. And I do think there is a high degree that can be developed over time. I don't think it's something that you're only born with or you're not. But that behavioral trait to understand that a small amount of suffering repetitively leads to an outcome which is beneficial. And that's the secret sauce. Pardon the pun.
What is the harshest physical environment that you have personally experienced?
I think there are probably two instances that come to mind. One was environmentally more dangerous than the other, but the second was psychologically much harder for me. The environmentally more dangerous one would have definitely have been in the second trip that I did to the Arctic, which was a few years ago. And we had what's called a full whiteout day. So this is where visibility, I wouldn't be able to see you. This is where the temperature really plummeted. There was a huge expanse of cold pressure that came in.
So like a snowstorm.
It was a snowstorm to another degree, right? And we had to go from point A to point B. So we hunkered down, we bunkered in. We said, okay, we're going to go in case it gets worse, and then we're stuck. And on that sort of day out, which would have been, we had to cover, I think, 14 or 15 kilometers through the day. By foot, hauling all our gear on our backs. So we had our 20 kilo backpacks on, and then a few of us were pulling sort of 70, 80 kilo sleds as well. So it was
No huskies.
No huskies there. All human powered.
Right.
And incredibly cold. It's hard to fathom how cold minus 20 degrees plus is until you're there. This is you literally, you sort of uncover your mouth to put something in, and within a few minutes, that area is sort of frozen up because of sort of the breath and the cold air, etc. So that was physically sort of the hardest weather, and also mentally it was hard because for 10 to 12 hours, or the only thing we were doing was walking in a straight line pretty much. Very difficult to see the person in front. They may have been 3-4 meters ahead, and you're just sort of seeing the back of that person's head. So cold that you couldn't even listen to anything because the batteries were dead. There's no telephone signal there anyway, but if you had the opportunity for music, it was gone because the phone batteries, etc., were cold. So you're in your head. The only sound you can hear is sort of the stomp of your foot on snow and ice. There's no visual stimulation because everything is a whiteout. And for all intents and purposes, one could have been on sort of the surface of another planet. I mean, it's that extraterrestrially different. We were cut off from nearest humans, I don't know, 100+ kilometers away. So there's no help anyway, except just us. But a hugely exhilarating experience as well through that as well. So for me, up until now, that's probably been the harshest environment that I've been in. And I hope and look forward to one day maybe something harsher, but at least that's where we're at. In terms of physically, the hardest definitely would be, so I love trekking, I love climbing. And a year and a half ago, some friends and I, we went on a climb to India's highest trekkable peak, which is a mountain in Ladakh. It's called Jojongo. It's near Kangyatse 2 and Kangyatse 1. It's in the same region in Ladakh. It's about 21,500, 22,000 feet. And summit day there was physically, for me, the hardest I've ever done it.
That's a great example of some crazy stress, but good stress.
Good stress.
You framed it as good. You paid for it.
Yeah.
What is the difference between good stress and bad stress?
Good stress is where, in both of those examples, the reason why they're good stressors is because the body, whilst it's breaking down in the acute moment, the experience of having lived through that allows the body to be stronger physically and mentally thereafter. So physically, why do I say that? When you are exposed to a low oxygen environment, the reason why you find a lot of scientists and doctors and medics even doing expeditions to high altitude, it's because that environment provides for a beautiful surrogacy to what's happening in the intensive care wards the world over. Right. So we live on Earth with an atmosphere. The atmosphere is an ocean of air. And as you ascend up that ocean, there is less of it above you. Therefore, it becomes thinner. There's less pressure. There's less concentration of gas. So as you go up, there's less oxygen. And so your body has to now deal with an increasingly lower and lower partial pressure of oxygen. And as it does that, oxygen is fundamental to life. It drives all of the processes. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation. So as you expose your body to lower and lower partial pressures of oxygen, your body learns through a variety of different adaptive responses to be better at doing what it needs to do, which is produce energy. And there was a Nobel Prize that was won for this a few years ago. So that experience of climbing a mountain stresses the body, yes, but it creates within the body a physiological drive to be much stronger and better, especially when you return back to sea level. That period stays with you for a short period of time, but the adaptive response potentially stays with you lifelong. And that is why you find so many athletes spending time at high altitude, especially in the build-up for an Olympic Games or a big championship event. Because there's a set of physiological adaptations which allows the body to be physically better when it needs to perform. So that's the example of a high altitude environment. And the same is true of the second, which is the cold. And we can extrapolate that now to the conversation we were having on the lift over here, which is cold water baths, cold showers, things that a lot of our audience would be seeing on their Instagram feed probably every single day. I just took it to a high level of extreme, which is when you are in a cold environment like that, what is happening to the body in the stress response, which is leading to a betterment. And we can measure that. We were measuring salivary cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone, which is secreted when you're stressed. So what happens when you get to colder and colder environments, and what happens to the salivary secretion? We had chest straps where we were measuring your resting heart rate, but we were also measuring your heart rate variability, which is a metric which anyone with a wearable device like a Whoop or a Ring or a ultra-human ring will be able to measure. And we know that now in terms of what it means from a biomarker lens. So these are examples classically where the physical frame is pushed, stressed, but it learns, it grows, and we can adapt and use that to our advantage.
Got it. What is eustress?
Eustress is the physiological word for good stress. So when I say good stress, when we write it biologically, it's eustress. That's EUSTRESS. And in the same way, when people talk about quote unquote stress in a negative context, they should be using the word distress, DISTRESS.
Okay, so you shouldn't. Stress is a neutral word, actually.
It is. Yeah.
We've, as always, played with the language.
Yes.
Eustress, I like that. Eustress and distress.
That's right.
Not stress.
Not stress.
So I would really like, as we go through this conversation, for everyone watching this to really reframe, including myself, this word stress.
Yeah.
And you, in your book, you talk about building this new mindset around stress. So I guess all things have to start with the mindset. Yeah. What is the first mental shift that we have to make?
So the first one is appreciating that there's a difference between the two, and that we cannot allow ourselves to be so overconsumed to only think that there is one. And the minute you discover that there is another side of the coin, well, the world just doubles itself up, right? So that for me was the first. And then once we have that knowledge, then creating a construct where we can minimize and mitigate the bad stressors, identifying them, and then creating strategies to minimize and mitigate the bad stressors, and then building in habitual behaviors daily where we can continually expose ourselves to increasingly larger amounts of good stressors.
You always think of someone, you're like, oh, that person has no stress. Two things people think is, though, I have a lot of stress. His dad gave him so much money, whatever, people have... Can a person have a comfortable life and still become weak because they don't face stress?
The comfort will lead to weakness, for sure. What is interesting about the way you phrase that question, or the example you gave rather, was looking at that person through the lens of, let's say, money, right? Which I accept is a key factor in living today. But someone may have money, but may still have a whole bunch of other stressors, emotional relationships. Lack of purpose itself is quite eroding for many. And I'm sure, like you, have had friends who are entrepreneurs who've had big exits, and then suddenly they just discover, okay, what do I do now? Right? What's my purpose? And that itself leads to a strange internal state. So I think we have become too comfortable being comfortable. We celebrate convenience culture in our lives, which it manifests in terms of digital products and how we live our day-to-day living as well. And because of that, yes, we are becoming weaker as a species, undoubtedly. Whether it is intellect, whether it is emotional resiliency, whether it is physical capacity, all three of those are eroding themselves as we increasingly try and outsource and downgrade to a convenience.
Escape the environment in a way, not be in the heat or, like otherwise we used to expose ourselves. Historically, we were outside. There was no indoor AC space. There was no AC.
Yeah.
So basically what we're saying is we have to add good stress in our life.
Yes.
So what are some easy micro stresses, as you call them, that everyone can start with today?
Yeah. So the first thing can be the cold shower. I think it is definitely the easiest thing to do. And it really represents a variety of ways of exposing your body to uncomfortable physical situations. And then you can add layers. But the cold shower is simple enough to do. You could do it as an ice plunge of the face. If your gym has a chill pool, fantastic. So there are different ways of exposing. Now these fancy gyms have got cryo units and liquid nitrogen tanks and all of these things. But fundamentally, you are exposing your body to a temperature deficit. Physically, there is some data to suggest that your recovery process will be faster when you've done it in the right time. I do it more from the psychological growth perspective, because that dopaminergic surge that you get, the vagal tonality overdrive that happens, is just so profound that you just feel so much more alive coming out of it. And it definitely adds a lot to your internal capacity and battery for the rest of the day. So that can be a great starting point. So daily exposure, whatever you can take. If you have the ability to plunge in, it's better than having it on the surface, because the physiological and psychological response is different. We know that from how heat is convected or conducted from the surface of the skin. I have a pool which is in the gym, which maintains itself at somewhere between 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So you could take a big bowl and you could put water in that bowl, cold water. Go to your freezer, take a tray of ice, put the ice into that water, and then just plunge your face in. And literally, you just cover the surface of your face. You have a lot of temperature receptors on the face itself. And do it for 20, 30 seconds, come back out for air, do it again for 20, 30 seconds, come back out for air. You can do that 3 times. Something you can do at home. But the physiological, psychological stress that creates is still enough to trigger some of these responses within your body. And I think that's easy enough for anyone to really do at home.
That is definitely easy enough for anyone.
Yeah.
And I can say, you spoke about vagal tone. What is vagal tone and why is it so important?
Okay, so we have a yin and a yang. The body is constantly in this interdance between the two opposing forces that exist from a stress perspective. There is something called the fight and flight mechanism, which is called the sympathetic nervous system. And the opposing force, which is the rest and digest, what we call it, is the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is obviously to get up and go, and the parasympathetic is to sort of slow down and relax. And the two are constantly trying to over the other one, and therefore an equilibrium is reached at some point. So the vagus nerve is this parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic nervous system, the main arm of that, the main actor in that is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve innervates the heart, the lungs, the gut, the eyes, the urinary bladder.
Where is it?
It comes out of the brain, and it's the 10th nerve of what we call the cranial nerves. So it's one of the cranial nerves that come out of the brain, and then it goes into the spinal cord. It makes its way down, and then it sends off these branches to various organs in the system, and ultimately all going back up and connecting it. And it is the main actor in that parasympathetic. So when your body wants to put itself in a rest and digest phase, it'll send more signals to the vagus nerve. For example, its signal to the heart will get the heart to slow down and stop beating as fast. Its signal to the gut will allow the gut to innervate with blood and start to begin the process of digestion. And it does a whole bunch of other things. But what's so fascinating about the vagus nerve, unlike all of the other nerves, which tend to be autonomic in nature, we don't have a degree of control over it. The vagus nerve innervates our breathing response, and the action of breaths can control the vagus nerve and can increase its activity, which is why, again, probably so rooted in our wisdom and culture, we talk a lot about breathwork. And breathwork exaggerates the vagal response and can improve the parasympathetic drive, therefore leading to a good stress and a relaxation mode.
Mention a bunch of micro stressors.
Yeah.
I like that a lot because daily actionable habits that we can do to invite the good stress into our lives. Could you give us some examples?
We can do something as simple and small as skipping or delaying a meal, right? Once again, we've created a culture for ourselves where we feel we need to be well fed and full all the way through. And the minute there's a little bit of hunger, we want to put some calories in. But that's not how nature designed or allowed us to evolve. We've had periods of time where we should have a scarcity of calories. And the simple act of delaying your breakfast by a couple of hours, bringing your dinner forward by a couple of hours, reducing the amount of food that you would typically eat, by half the quantity or a third of the plate, etc. These are all examples where you can just begin to stress the system a little bit and begin to feel actually how good you feel on the other side. And I guarantee you, anyone who's watching this, that if you do that, you will feel suddenly you feel lighter, you feel better, you sleep better, you wake up feeling much more refreshed. You will find that your ability to focus and concentrate and the clarity of thought is much deeper. So that simple act of time restricted eating or intermittent fasting or calorie restriction can be a great way for people to get started.
Any other things?
Yeah, so maybe 4 things, and I mentioned these 4 things in the book. The first is try a physical activity today which pushes you beyond what you would normally do, and that could be a simple thing of trying something new in the gym, or maybe running that little bit faster, or adding a little bit of a hill over terrain, or swimming a few extra lengths, but something which will physically push you beyond your typical comfort zone. That could be one. Second is, I'm sure a lot of people who work in corporate can probably relate to this, speak up in a meeting. Oftentimes there are things we want to say, but we just feel what will the room perceive that thought to be. And I guarantee you that probably that is the insight which everyone is either thinking themselves or waiting to be heard. So be brave enough to speak up in a meeting.
We hope that.
We hope that. Let's see. Perhaps people can tell us after they've tried it. The third is, one of my favorites, which is skip a meal, which is delay your breakfast, prepone your dinner.
So there you feel that gnawing, but it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And the fourth will be the cold shower. Just even if you just want to turn the tap to cold right at the end,
yes,
and withstand that. But these are 4 things we could each do every day. Frankly, good moments of stressors, build some stimulus, and hit the day hard.
How does someone know when they're trying all these different micro stressors or other things? Cold water immersion, sauna, environmental things, mental things, eating things, all these things, exercising. I think these are the 4 kind of areas which you work on. How does someone know if this stress is making me stronger, better, happier, whatever they want, more resilient, or, it's damaging me, I'm doing too much maybe, or it's not for me?
I think we should divide into subjective and objective. The subjective aspects, which we will feel in our gut, is probably answering some of that, which is whether we feel better over a long run for doing something, or we're finding it just making us more anxious or particularly overwhelmed. I exist in a very data-centric world, and I've partially designed it that way. So I can look at markers of physical and psychological improvement.
So your name is Marcus.
So physical markers could be something as simple, and a lot of our audience, I imagine, will probably have a wearable. They may not use it every day, but it's probably lying around in a drawer of theirs. So there is a digital biomarker which you can look at, and it's called heart rate variability. And I wrote a very, very small chapter on this in the book as well. And this is, remember I spoke about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, the dance between the two. So in that tango between the two of them, there is a rhythm that is created, and that rhythm manifests itself in the beat of our heart. So when we think about our heartbeat, and let's just say we imagine the heart to be beating 60 beats per minute, it's not like a metronome. It is not beating on the second, every second, with that degree of uniformity that we would have with that device. No. Each successive heartbeat comes a millisecond faster or slower. And the reason it comes faster or slower is depending upon whether it's the sympathetic that's in overdrive or the parasympathetic that's in overdrive. Yeah. So when the parasympathetic system is in overdrive, there's actually a greater variance in the heart rate. So the heart rate variability goes up. When the sympathetic system is in overdrive, the variance actually goes down, and the heart becomes much more uniform. It's beating, it's marching to a particular beat.
The soldier is worried.
Exactly.
Fight or flight is
exactly.
triggered.
It's doing what it's told. It's like, don't move to the left, don't move to the right, just do what I tell you to do, right? So you can look at your heart rate variability as a number. It's typically, it's a number between 60, 80, 100 plus. And you can see from that score where if you're on the higher side of the spectrum, it means that your parasympathetic system, your vagal drive, is the dominant effect. So you're in a more relaxed, rested state.
Through the day.
Through the day. And the opposite is true. And how can you use that to your advantage? Imagine you wake up and your usual number is, let's say, 80 as your HRV, as your heart rate variability. Suddenly you wake up and you find that, oh, my HRV today is 30. What that means is that my body is in a stressed state. It's an indicator that something is happening. Now, it could be that you are in the beginning of a viral infection. It could be that you slept really poorly the night before. You've had a few too many drinks. You were hyper caffeinated. It could be that you know psychologically that there is a high degree of distress. There are many reasons. It's not specific.
It's your life.
It's highly sensitive.
Right.
Yeah. And that on that day, you can start to do things to change how much bad stress or distress you put onto your system. So you may opt for a different workout. You may not push your body hard in the gym. You may instead go for a walk. You may instead maybe do some yoga. You may instead do some stretching and flexibility, but you won't do an HIIT workout. You will not try and, do a PB, a personal best in a 5K run, as an example. You may then choose not to intermittently fast that day. You may choose that day not to be so strict on yourself when it comes to calorie restriction. Eat your 3 meals that you want to, but be a little bit more careful with how much carbs and processed foods you put in, because your body is already in a high cortisol state. The calorie requirement is already very high, and you probably will do better if you have a food or a plate which is better in healthy fats, more protein, more fiber, and less in carbs. So like that, there are many strategies that you can employ by the simple knowledge of what state of stress your body is in, and that can come through just knowing what your HRV is.
So if you find out you're stressed through your HRV, what is the best food to eat?
So I would opt for a plate which is full of fiber and good fats. Good fats, if you're a non-vegetarian, would be like a fatty fish. If you're a vegetarian, it could be something like avocados or nuts. Obviously cheeses. Some of the cheeses are...
You can eat cheese.
You can eat cheese.
Because, when people are stressed, they want something a little bit comforting also.
Right.
I just want to talk a little bit more about HRV because I did use it. So the HRV is calculated as an average to the day or something, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But there are periods of time where the HRV is meaningful. Wow. So the period of time that we really look at is what was your overnight HRV.
Got it.
Right? Because as you go about your day-to-day task, whether it be the act of climbing a flight of stairs, coming up to the office, or whether it be a phone call, there will be a natural sympathetic response that happens. That's not your baseline. That's not your normal.
So it's a nighttime HRV.
We like to look at your nighttime
So when you wake up in the morning, you look at your HRV.
Exactly.
Can HRV indicate burnout before you even feel it?
Oh, yes, very much so. So resting heart rate and HRV are two non-specific, highly sensitive markers, which will allow us insight into whether something is around the corner. The most powerful study that I've ever seen came out during the pandemic itself, which was done by Apple, where they had millions of data points on so many different people, and they actually correlated it back to the progression of symptoms associated with COVID-19. And they found that there was an elevation in heart rate up to 70 of resting heart rate and a depression in HRV up to 72 hours before the onset of symptoms. So the body is that sensitive. And if you're looking for the right metric in the right place at the right time, you can get these sort of inferences and insights. So wow. it is really predictive and powerful.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, small pause. This is the part where I'm supposed to ask you to subscribe. But honestly, only do it if you want more conversations that actually make you think. That's the whole point of the secret sauce. All right, back to it. You train a lot of elite athletes and Olympians, several members of the IPL team. Of course, they are high performers, so they schedule recovery very seriously.
Yeah.
How does a normal person who wants to be healthy and exercises, our audience, what should they think about this word recovery?
I think the first is that we should all appreciate that whilst we operate in a different, and I do this talk where, and I have data points where we look at what a professional athlete does in his or her day and over the course of their career, and what say a normal individual does. And I call this group here, because I do it for a corporate audience, the corporate athlete. And actually, when you compare the two, the corporate athlete has a much harder job, because this professional athlete has a team of experts behind them. They have a playing season, but they typically have an off season as well. That's changing a bit now with commercialization of sport, which a lot of the athletes are beginning to complain about. But there is a bit of an off season. They have access to all these tools, capabilities, etc. They operate in a defined theater where the rules are known. And you look at us, where we don't have a down season. We don't have a team behind us. And our theater of war is unknown, volatile, and highly complex with rules which keep changing. Right?
Whatever it is.
So in my thesis, therefore, to everyone is that the corporate athlete or the day-to-day individual has to actually put more of an emphasis on recovery, because it has an even bigger role to play in enhancing performance and capability versus the professional athlete. But we just don't look at our lives in that lens. Now, recovery for me gets divided into two phases. There is what you can do actively and what you can do passively. The passive is something, I won't say as simple as sleep, because sleep is hugely complex, but it's something which we can build into our lives. So we need to start with sleep. And there's a huge sort of rabbit hole that we can go down in terms of what sleep is, how much, But let's just park that point to one side, because the point I do want to make is that there is a lot we can do to actively recover faster, better for every insult that is applied to us. Examples of this we have spoken about a little bit already on the show today. Number one is cold exposure. Cold exposure is an active recovery tool, which when applied to the right setting can enhance and hasten your recovery physically and emotionally. Heat exposure, sauna, steam, a warm shower, a hot pad. These are all examples where you can apply heat as a source, which aids and accelerates recovery as well. Light-based recovery. So now the modern day panels which exist in many places, like red light therapy and photomodulation therapy. Again, light is nothing but energy, and energy is being imparted to the cell through the skin, which can enhance recovery and improve repair. Oxygen-based recovery. So there are clinics and centers where you can either have hyperbaric, so a lot of oxygen, or hypobaric oxygen. And both of those states, as we spoke earlier, can lead to a differential respiratory, cardiovascular benefit and metabolic benefit to improve. Fasting, intermittent fasting or calorie restriction, that is also a form of active recovery. Because if you provide the body the right fuel at the right time, and the appropriate amount of fuel at the right time, you can actually promote recovery as well. So the interventions and techniques like massage, trigger point release, dry needling, these again are all examples where you can actively do something to hasten and accelerate recovery for your system so that you can be a better corporate or entrepreneur or homemaker version of yourself.
More productive version of yourself. Basically, if someone is has the infrastructure, but if someone is feeling stressed with the everyday life thing, what would you recommend more? A sauna, steam, or a cold ice shower?
If they are feeling physically drained and physically exhausted, I would definitely ask them to spend time in the sauna, because you will have physical benefits from that, cardiovascular, metabolite, detoxification, etc. If they need a pick-me-up charge and there's no sort of physical aspect of that, but mentally perhaps they're feeling a little bit low, then I would acutely expose them to a cold environment, because they will come out of that cold shower or that cold bath feeling alive and ready to hit the day hard.
You spoke about light therapy.
Yeah.
Can we benefit from it?
We can. It's not as beneficial as social media probably suggests it to be. And certainly the only audience I use it in are my elite level of individuals, or people who are doing all the basics so well that now that extra 1% increment will mean something, right? So the day-to-day person, if they're not eating well, if they're not sleeping well, if they're not moving well, if they haven't got a conducive environment, then suddenly sitting in front of red light, not going to lead to the gains that you would expect. But if you're doing all those things well, then fantastic.
So would you say that all these things we're doing, fasting, cold showers and all, is teaching us to deal with pain in a way?
Yeah.
And rewiring how we use that word pain.
Rewiring and the creation of, we're too comfortable being comfortable. And we actually need to adopt more discomfort in our lives, because it's in that discomfort that actually growth will happen.
Right. You talk a lot about Navy SEALs, US Navy SEALs, which people have mostly seen in a Hollywood movie about these insanely tough commandos who can go anywhere and do anything, dropping in the middle of the night into the ocean. What can we normal mere mortals learn from Navy SEALs?
Something I took away from looking at the research data there was a fascinating technique of breathwork that they do, which is called the physiological sigh, which is you take a big breath in, and then when you think you're at your top, you take another smaller breath in, and now you breathe out completely through your mouth, and you just make a ha sound through it as well.
You make a loud ha.
A loud sort of expiration sound as well.
Just one?
Yeah, that in itself, where your expirationary phase is longer than your inspirationary phase, will activate your vagal tone and give you that parasympathetic control.
And when do Navy SEALs do this?
Oh, I mean, I imagine in very stressful situations, but what they probably consider to be a very stressful situation is probably different to where we consider it. Yeah.
I read a very interesting thing in your book about how elite performers fiercely protect their evenings.
Yeah.
Why would an IPL player, an Olympic athlete, an F1 driver protect their evenings?
So you can, I like to use the analogy of a young parent with a child, and all young parents watching this or who've had young children will appreciate that there's a routine that is built around a child getting ready for bed and then successfully going to sleep. But what happens as we get older is we believe that we no longer need the routine ourselves, and we can do our long commute, have our late dinner, watch an exciting show, and then try to fall asleep. And then we suffer the consequences of that. So that's why athletes are so protective, because they ensure their physical environment is optimized so that they can maximize the amount and depth of sleep, and with that, therefore, the ability to recover as well. And there are so many small touch points. There's the quality and level of light. There is the temperature in the room. There is the freshness of the air. There is what they eat when they eat. There is what they will do in that period of time leading up to bedtime as well. So it's actually a very well constructed environment. And unfortunately, I'll share the example because I've done so much work in IPL. With the night matches which are happening now, it has completely disrupted that recovery cycle. Thankfully now what has happened, in the old days we used to have a system where travel day was considered your rest day. Now, at least after travel day, you typically have another rest day before you go in. But certainly when we look at biomarkers through the entire season, we see biomarkers of sleep and recovery decline because of the accrual of all that damage that happens.
Night matches.
Yeah.
So take me through, like you said 4 things, I think. What is the best way to optimize sleep for less stress?
My favorite is temperature. We have studied, and when I say we, I mean science has shown that a temperature band somewhere between 17 to 19 degrees Celsius is optimal for maximizing deep sleep. Now, some of that is due to the hibernation reflex that we have where we sleep deeper in cold environments. A lot of our audience will anecdotally appreciate that when it's a hot, humid day, you have a poor night's sleep as well. So we know this to be true from anecdotes as well. So if we can control the bedroom environment to be cold, we will have deeper, more restful sleep. Some people can't tolerate the cold. That's a different side. That's a different story. Interestingly, there are spouses who one person likes it hot, one likes it cold. But there's a new bed that can solve for that as well. It's a little bit expensive, but you can have different temperatures in the 2 halves of the bed. So that for me is the favorite. Again, temperature is to start with. The second very, very effective way of improving sleep is managing your meal times and what you eat before you go to bed. So please do not try and have a heavy big meal and then sleep immediately after that. That is setting yourself up for a metabolic disaster whilst you're asleep. You should try and finish your meal at least 2 hours before bedtime. That dinner should be light. It should be one where it's high in fat, high in protein, low in carbs, like a lot of things. And then no snacking before bedtime. It'll allow your digestive system and your metabolism to reach a stage where you can sleep deeply. So that's the second. The third for me is technology. We are very, very protective at home. Actually, if you come into our room, there is practically no tech in the bedroom, right? And again, modern day lifestyles fill our bedrooms with all of this tech and noise and all of this stuff, which just distracts the brain and prevents us from sleeping properly.
So how many hours before should you not have any screen time?
I mean, ideally, the number suggests an hour to 90 minutes. I appreciate it's very, very hard to do because the Netflix and OTT shows, they compete with sleep. I mean, he openly talks about the fact that the biggest competitor is sleep. But if you're choosing a medium of media, try and choose one which is more relaxing. So maybe reading a book, listening to a podcast, even if you want to watch something, listen to The Secret Sauce or watch The Secret Sauce before bed. Even if you're going to watch something which is relaxing. So maybe not a crime thriller. Yeah. Definitely not that news program with that guy with the many people fighting and arguing. That's just going to raise your cortisol. It's exactly the opposite of what you want before bedtime. So you can do these simple acts and you will notice that you sleep better because of it.
Can you give us one anecdote about some athlete or high performer where a small stress or recovery intervention made a dramatic difference?
Yeah, so one of my favorites, completely aligned to this example, is the England rugby team in the World Cup before last, which was being played in Japan. And they spent somewhere close to $1 million in flying out beds, mattresses, duvets, and pillows for all the athletes so that they could have as restful a sleep as possible. I was working with a couple of athletes in the Paris Olympics last year. The Paris Olympics was being held in summer and the Paris Games was going to be the first green games. So there was no air conditioning in the Olympic Village. And so there was a lot of, anxiety, but good stress beforehand from all of us saying, how will we optimize the recovery of the athletes? And so we even went down the route of figuring out, could we send with them these mattress toppers for the beds so that the temperature of the bed could be controlled and kept cool whilst they wouldn't be allowed any air conditioning. It is a problem which is increasingly becoming harder to manage because temperatures the world over. I mean, IPL is happening in summer. You can imagine how hot it is out there. So managing temperatures is very, very important for athletes. Yeah.
They spent $1 million on beds.
Yeah.
And what happened then?
Well, I mean, I can't remember how England did in that World Cup. But my point was that is the importance which sports teams pay towards recovery and sleep for their athletes. Yeah.
Just one last thing on all these techniques for building good stress. A famous cardiologist on our podcast actually said that a lot of heart attacks happen in the gym. They don't happen when you're sleeping.
Right.
Is there anything we have to worry about when we're pushing ourselves in all these areas?
Yeah.
To run a little faster, eat a little less, take a longer time in the ice bath.
The advantage of good stress occurs when you allow the body to recover.
Right.
If you are only applying stress to a system, it's never going to recover and grow. And therefore, yes, anecdotally, we are seeing more events happen, cardiac events happen in periods of high stress. But I think a significant proportion of that or contribution towards that is because those individuals potentially did not allow their bodies the opportunity to recover and rest before the second application.
Like, what I loved about your book is it has all these tools / hacks to help. reset our system,
Yeah.
start enjoying stress, all these things.
Yeah.
One of them I liked is you talk about the first things that you do
Yeah.
and the last things that you do. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you recommend are the first things that everybody should do when they wake up?
So be as technology free as possible, right? Use that 1 hour to really focus on things where, and again, it's difficult, right? I know the world we live in, which is where we all gravitate towards the phone because it's right next to us. But if we can try and create a ritual or a routine at home where we spend that time hydrating, we spend that time in sunlight, we spend that time absorbing something, reading something. But we tend to do the opposite. We gravitate towards caffeine. We gravitate towards stimulus. We will either pump our body with caffeine, we will get some dopaminergic hit through the technology, we will rush in some calories and carbs, we will hit the ground and hit the gym or do something. I prefer the first hour to be more relaxing and reflective in nature.
So I'm going to speak about some more things that people can do through the day, through everybody's busy days. You have a lot of hacks, good hacks, to, calm yourself down, reset yourself. One thing I liked you said is that speed does not equal control. And we're always speeding up when we're under stress. So can you tell us a little bit more about how we should be able to firstly understand that we are speeding up because we're stressed in what environments, what situations, and then how to control that?
Yeah. So when we are in a position of distress, bad stress, oftentimes we find ourselves wanting to or hastening the activities around us to try and resolve that situation. And it's in that hasten and speed that mistakes can happen, that we react rather than respond. So we choose the wrong outcome or the wrong decision rather than the right outcome or the right decision. And so a common thread in that section was, how do we give or create an opportunity for us to slow down? And there are many ways that we can do that to be more present in that moment. The simple act, I have the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule, which is name 5 objects around you, listen for 4 sounds, try and smell 3 aspects, feel 2 things. So you're activating all 5 senses, and that sort of grounds you and just slows you down for a second. Some of the breathing activities that we spoke about, again, a great way of slowing you down and allowing you
like you're having
to
an
take
altercation
control.
with someone in your office, or a stressful situation, which happens every day, micro stressful situation, but it irritates you, someone has irritated you, and you want to react. I think that's the most common thing that happens. What should you do for that?
So the pause, the 3-second pause is a good technique that you can use, which is, rather than instinctively just shout out and blurt out what you want to do, which will be a reaction, just hold yourself for 3 seconds. And in that, allowing you to think about what it is that you want to really do or really say, and then act upon that, right? That changes it from a reaction to an actual response. That could be a very effective thing. I personally love the idea of worry windows. That's another thing which I mentioned a little bit, which is that you orchestrate for yourself a moment in time through your day where you allow yourself to worry. And this works in a strange way. People will say, well, why are you exposing yourself to anxiety and worry? The reason you do this is, firstly, when you provide a limited period of time, your brain moves from sort of rumination to problem solve, because it understands, I need to solve something in this period of time. So that's helpful. And you can, over a period of time, develop strategies to overcome some of the problems that you have. The second is, more subconsciously, when your brain recognizes that there are moments where it's allowed to do something, then the background anxiety or signals that it sends will slow down over a period of time, right? So this is something very powerful, which people can do, which is orchestrate a worry window in their day schedule. The second thing that I like to suggest is that you do a download and a dump technique, which is before you go to bed at night, before your end of day, just physically write down things that you feel you haven't solved for or will likely keep you up or keep you anxious through the night. Now, you actually have to physically do this, because if you just think about it, you're not really downloading it. The act of actually writing it down allows your brain to say, oh, I've signaled, I've downloaded this thought to a piece of paper. Importantly, you need to act on it the next day, so that your brain begins to recognize a loop for itself. And people find that actually by doing this activity, they anxiously wake up less over a period of time, particularly in the night. Because when you wake up at night, yes, you're woken up by the thought, but you stay awake because you fear you're going to forget to act upon it the next day. So this sort of diary dump or download technique is an effective one as well.
Yeah, you mentioned gratitude, which is, I know, a very important thing. I work on gratitude every day as well. Tell us about gratitude and how it's not a cheesy thing, but it can really help your stress and your life.
I think a lot of us forget how lucky we are. I mean, if you just look back through history, I know the world seems like a horrible place right now, and we are faced with a lot of existential crises around us for sure. But we are still living in a period of time where our species is the healthiest it's ever been. It's the most educated it's ever been. It's got access to everything it totally requires. But we forget about those things. And therefore, I brought it into the book because I wanted to remind people that we should be more grateful. Someone who works at Stanford once told me that gratitude is activated in a particular part of the brain. And when it does so, that positive sentiment, which it then sort of overwhelms the brain with, does not compete with the negative, in the sense that the brain is either in a state of positivity or will be in a state of negative. You can't be stressed
if you are grateful.
Exactly. And it's a very powerful emotion. So we should have more moments of gratitude in the day, not just for the big things, for the small things, especially for the small things. And therefore, there was a chapter where I wrote that an interesting reframe for us in life is, instead of saying I have to do something, I have to pick up the kids, I have to send that email, I have to go to that birthday, you change it to say I get to. Because how many people out there would love to be doing that right now? I get to spend time with my children. I get to work on something which I find interesting. I get to meet my friends and that celebration. And that simple reframe, because reality is nothing but the story which is playing in our head. And if we reframe the story, the narrative, that inner voice, we will manifest a different reality. And it can be a more positive, powerful one for us.
Got it. You talk about learning to ride stress. What does that mean practically?
Stress can come in a wave. And typically, people will appreciate this when I describe it, which is that we all know that there is suddenly this wave of stress which is beginning to build up and build up. The beauty of it is much like a wave in an ocean, it passes. If you start to appreciate that internal mechanism to know when that wave is starting, you will also appreciate that that wave will pass, and that once it passes, you can do what you want to do as well. So it's much like the analogy of the swimmer, right? That wave is coming in the ocean, let the wave pass, and then you'll be able to do something. Don't get so caught up that you try and fight against it, and that'll overwhelm you and overpower you.
What is an undo list?
An undo list is a list of things that you should write down for stuff that shouldn't exist in your life, because our life is very cluttered. It's full of things that, frankly, we shouldn't be doing. In the same way as we make a to-do list every single day, which helps lead to productivity, we should, from time to time, write an undo list and stop doing those activities, because it will lead to more productivity as well.
Like undo, like I'm going to think negative things, like that kind of stuff.
It could be abstract. It could be very tangible. It could be something like, I need to stop attending that 3:00 meeting because frankly, I don't contribute anything there. I need to stop responding to reply all emails because what is the point of that? So there are lots of these small things that happen that we can undo.
Can abusing reduce stress?
I included that in the book. There is data to show that people who are more explicitive or colorful in their language tend to allow that stress to be released from their body. I'm not condoning, I just want to be careful. I'm not condoning that everyone suddenly...
In private, you should do it.
In private, there's data to show that that using that sort of terminology and language makes you feel less stressed.
Yeah.
Distressed.
It's a release.
It's a release. It's a cathartic release.
Just do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Like punching the pillow.
Like punching a pillow, screaming into a pillow, punching a bag. Yeah.
I think a big thing that, today is that everybody thinks they're into preventative health.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be into longevity. So it's become very noisy with influencers and everything.
Yeah.
How does one know whom to trust to do the right thing?
It has to be a voice of science. Look, what I'm very... So I started having these conversations about 6-7 years in India. And at that time, the word couldn't even be pronounced. It was pronounced longevity, and people just had no idea. Oftentimes the answer would be, well, aren't all doctors trying to help you live longer, right? Now, thankfully, because of platforms like social media and influencers the world over, these conversations are becoming more everyday. And that's something I'm actually grateful for, because more people are taking an active role in their day-to-day lives. But
awareness has definitely
increased, for sure.
Which is the start of everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a cultural nuance, which I'll share, especially after one of the well-known global influencers, Brian Johnson, visited India last year. So I'll share that story. But before I do, just to answer your question directly, I think it is important that anyone consuming information, because we don't expect the end user to get a PhD or an MD, right? But please go to sources where at least that individual has done the necessary work and research and experience and clinical expertise to say that, right? And do now, thankfully, these AI agents are so ubiquitous that all of us can check and double check and reconfirm, which is great. The example I wanted to share, which is something I found really fascinating, which was of Brian Johnson, who visited India last December. And I'd met him a few months prior in Dubai. We were both speaking at an event, and he proudly wears this t-shirt, "Don't die," because he believes that human beings may have reached the stage where we won't die. And he's trying to address that. So he came to India. He did his roadshow. Everyone knows what happened. And then I got this huge surge in phone calls, people calling me, as India's longevity doctor, longevity physician. How do I? So I started to answer. And what I found most interesting is that in India, there is a cultural sensitivity that it's not that we want to live long. We don't want to be immortal, for sure. And even this concept of living long is not something that everyone is looking at. But people are certainly hungry to live healthier. And a lot of that is it is connected to the whole conversation we've just had, which is our convenience culture and the lack of exposure to good stress has created a situation where we are becoming sicker at an earlier age, and we are suffering through that sickness for longer. There is more frailty in society. There's more decline. Energy levels are dropping, and people are experiencing that underwhelm, and they want to now do something about it. So that's where I frankly spend the majority of my time. Yes, I get to attend and be at IPL matches and work with Olympic athletes and have all this cool stuff going on, but most of it is translated to the everyday, which is how do you and I just become healthier?
Got it. I want to know a little bit more about, I had the privilege of coming to your office and seeing some of the things you do. So I wanted to understand for us and for the audience, if I'm a client of the Human Edge, what do I get? So
I started Human Edge 6 years ago, and I was a bit lazy. I called it the same as my book. My first book was called At the Human Edge. So I was not too inventive with the branding, but the idea was, how can I create a clinical protocol where we can be as data-centric as we possibly can, because we're all our own little individual universe of biology. And how can we measure, how can we understand, and how can we improve? Those were my 3 objectives for this. Now, after so many years, of course, that has grown and we are building an ecosystem and all of this stuff. But fundamentally, it's a process. It starts with measuring your body today. How do we understand your blood markers, your genetic makeup, your wearable data, imaging, functional history, lifestyle choices, the environment around you at work and office? All of this plays into who you are and what you are. And therefore, your risks of certain diseases, your biological age, and how certain systems are operating and functioning. So that's step one. So a person coming in can expect a comprehensive set of diagnostics to begin with. The second step is then understanding that. So what does it mean for you? That's what I was alluding to, some of these things. So what is your biological age and how is that different to how many birthdays you've had? What are the risks of certain diseases based on your genes, your epigenetics, and your phenotype? What are certain bodily systems doing? So developing and creating a report and building a plan, which is lifestyle first. Again, doctor, but not a fan of medicines and pharmacy. How do we first use lifestyle to our advantage and then bring in drugs where we need to, so that we can improve your sleep, so that we can enhance your gut health, so that we can optimize your hormones, so that we can give you the right fuel, all of these things that go into your lifestyle. And the last phase, which is how can we improve, which is that, yes, we have a technology platform that we've built. So everyone has access to the app and they can see all their fancy graphs and information. But I'm a big, big believer in human-centric, human-delivered healthcare, which is that the hero of everything is the relationship you have with the doctor, the health coach, your life coach, whatever. We have all of that sort of stuff happening in-house with our team. So that's what we do. It's a clinical protocol. It's designed for you, and we're very health outcome focused.
I think it's a very important point, the human connection also, because you can do it by yourself today with AI and an app and all, but it's hard and it's lonely and you probably won't stick to it over time. But when you have someone, I want to talk about aging a bit.
Yeah.
The yin and yang of longevity. Most people think aging means getting older. But just, I want to understand, because you're a longevity expert, what is happening in our body when we're aging?
So I don't look at aging as a bad thing. Again, it's like the word stress. We associate stress with bad. We associate aging with bad. Aging can be hugely beneficial for us to experience different aspects of our life. I think what we're craving for is for us to age well, so that we can enjoy some of the wisdom and mental faculties of experience, but not have frailty and decline associated with it. And it need not necessarily be the case. Aging medicine, geroscience, longevity science, these are all different words. But what we've begun to understand at a cellular level is that there are specific changes that are happening in the body, which is leading to this phenomena called aging. And those can be measured. People are working really hard to slow them down. Reversal, I think, is a big sort of fantasy away. But slowing them down can potentially happen, in the hope that that rate of decline is as slow as possible. And this leads to what is known in this field of science as the 12 hallmarks. These are almost like the 10 commandments, right? These 12 big cellular mechanisms which we've now recorded, we being the scientific community has recorded, which can be measured and can potentially, as I said, be slowed down and reversed. I'll talk about some of the ones that I find really interesting as an example.
These are the hallmarks.
These are the hallmarks of aging. So one of the top ones, and it's not like there's a degree of prioritization in there. They're actually all interconnected, and different people, different species have different rates of process of these things. But maybe 2 or 3 that we can talk about today, and one specifically that I found very, very interesting and exciting, because of the world I inhabited earlier, which is the high performance world, is your mitochondria. Right? So much so that I dedicated an entire chapter of it in my last book to the science of mitochondria. Yes. And I really do believe that in the next 10 years, we will start to see an area of medicine open up called mitochondrial medicine, where we can measure, intervene, diagnose, and improve mitochondria. What are they? Everyone watching this probably remembers their high school biology. Typically, it's depicted as like this Rajma sausage. Yes. And we call it the powerhouse of the cell because it's there to produce energy. Every cell in your body except the red blood cell has a mitochondria. And the mitochondria exists to produce energy. It's the currency so that that cell can do its task. A heart cell can beat, a brain cell can think, a pancreatic cell can secrete insulin. All cells have different tasks to do, and it can't do it without the currency. It can't do it without energy. Now, as we get older, the ability of the cell to produce energy starts to decline. That's one of the hallmarks of aging. I discovered it through the high performance world, because if we go back to the story I was telling you about Everest, the people at the summit of Everest are able to do without oxygen because their mitochondria is better at managing in a low oxygen environment.
Right.
So there's a connection that's happening between mitochondria and performance and mitochondria and aging.
Right.
And so that's one hallmark, right? Another hallmark is to do with how well your body is able to produce protein. So cells and tissues which are able to produce protein last longer. Muscle is a protein, right? The cell wall itself is a protein. So that's another mechanism. A third mechanism is cells' ability to signal to each other. So as we get older, the signaling capacity of cells starts to go down. So like this, there are 12 of those hallmarks, and they're fundamental. It's almost the rules of biology. And as we understand them better, hopefully we can do more things around them.
Got it. So, like you said, cellular energy. So our fatigue, poor recovery, low energy, is it a cellular energy problem or a motivation problem?
It's both, but there is always a beginning in the physical. So I tend to think of the body almost as a pyramid where you need to focus on the base foundation first. And we look at, let's say, micronutrients. So the micronutrient deficiencies that you have, iron, B12, D3, these will contribute very significantly to low energy. You improve for that, you can move on to the next level. What's the next level? Gut health. So how well are you at absorbing macronutrients from your food? Once you improve that, then you can move on to the next level. What's that? That's a hormone optimization. So like this, our body exists in layers, and you have to start at the foundation and then slowly build yourself up to something high.
What about like new molecules like Metformin, rapamycin, GLP-1s, peptides?
Yeah.
A lot of people are hacking nowadays and reading. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you think of all that in our space?
So again, there are two things happening. One is the repurpose of old molecules. So Metformin has been around for donkey's years, as has rapamycin. Now they are being looked at as gerotherapeutic agents. So agents to enhance cellular activity. And there's science that has to happen there. There are large randomized control studies which are happening around the world, looking at how molecules like these and others can potentially reduce adverse event, disease and aging, right? So that's one. The second are the advent of new molecules. So peptides are certainly being spoken about a lot on social media. The most popular, famous peptide today is insulin. Insulin is the oldest peptide that we know. GLP-1s are obviously 3-4 years old. And then, people who are scrolling through Instagram will see peptides like BPC 157, TB 500, copper, all of those things. Peptides are signaling molecules which are asking another cell to do something. Peptides are still very, very nascent. I think the data is very raw. There are no control studies the world over.
Oh.
I look at them with cautious optimism. So I'm optimistic that this could potentially open up a new sphere of therapies, but I'm still very, very cautious to say that people, you need to just wait until we have more data and science before you make yourself a guinea pig and a lab rat.
Why is muscle now being treated as an anti-aging organ?
Because if there's one tissue which I would suggest we all get better at growing, from an aging perspective, it would be muscle. Muscle is not just aesthetically there to make you look better, right? It's an endocrine organ. It secretes, it releases myokines and chemicals which improve your brain health, through neurotransmitters and chemistry, which improves your ability to manage glucose through metabolism. It protects your bones from when you fall potentially in your old age. So it provides that scaffolding. There are so many benefits of muscle, so much so that we now routinely do a DEXA and a body composition scan on everyone going through our protocol, because knowing how much muscle they have and what the quality of bone is predictive of what will happen to them in their older years. Their aging or their probability of living healthier for longer is higher.
Yes.
And people forget, or they think that muscle is only built in the gym. I just want to address this here for our audience. There are 4 quadrants to building muscle. There is the stimulus, which is when you're lifting that weight, which is important because it provides the good stress for the muscle to then grow. There is the substrate, which is the protein or the building blocks, the amino acids that the muscle needs to actually grow in size. There is the hormonal environment, which are required for the muscle to have the right signaling, like testosterone as an example, for the muscle to therefore grow over a period of time. And finally, there is the recovery phase, which is the period of time between stimuluses where the actual growth happens. If any one of these 4 quadrants is missing or not focused upon, you will find, like a lot of people probably watching, they may say, they come to me, doc, but I go to the gym 3 times a week, but I'm not gaining muscle. They may not be consuming enough protein. They may not be sleeping enough. Their testosterone may be in their boots. So all 4 of these are important for you to grow muscle over time and start to see the benefits of that.
Got it. What is the first thing you would change in the life of, like a client who's a, high performing in that they're, very successful in their business, but they're kind of burnt out? What is the first thing you would change?
I have 5 pillars. It's sleep, fuel, move, breathe, and connect. And it always goes in that order. So it starts with improving the basics, which is the foundation, which is sleep and recovery. After that, we look at how do you fuel the machine to make sure you're getting the right macros and micros and supplementation. Then we look at movement, not exercise, but the different forms of movement, strength training, aerobic, anaerobic, flexibility, balance. Then we move on to breathe, which is your relationship you have with stress, improving the good, mitigating the bad. And the last is connect, which is how do you connect with yourself? How do you connect with the people around you, with your relationships? And then lastly, how do you connect with the world around you through nature?
And you do all this in your company, Human Edge?
It's all part of our longevity protocol.
How should someone use caffeine? You talk about the benefits of caffeine.
Yes.
Tell us more.
So caffeine is a stimulant, but you should use it at a particular phase of your day. So what you should not or need not do is take it first thing in the morning, because your blood cortisol level is already at its highest physiologically. Use it when you begin to see a dip, which would typically happen sometime between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Anything after 2 p.m., it'll spoil your nighttime architecture.
Even 2 p.m.?
Yeah, anything after that.
No coffee after 2 p.m.?
No caffeine after 2 p.m. Because the half-life of caffeine is 6 hours and some people are slow metabolizers of it. So you will have too much of it in your bloodstream when you want to go to bed at night. So that optimal window for me is the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Window.
That's very interesting because a lot of people do it like after lunch, 3 to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
What is the minimum exercise routine for a busy person?
Minimum is 150 minutes as recommended by the WHO. My recommendation is 300. These are minutes per week. My recommendation my recommendation is 300 minutes per week.
Which is what?
About an hour if you're exercising 6 days a week.
An hour, right.
Yeah. And it should be varied. You must not do the same thing every single day. Yeah.
Does yoga count?
Yoga can count. Yeah. But yoga should not be the only form of exercise.
No, of course.
Neither should walking.
Nothing. No one thing.
Yeah.
One of the things we want to do is talking about reframing the word stress. So what symptoms should we not refer to as stress?
Well, I think, again, it's all negative context. So let's not only focus on the overwhelm and the anxiety and the rapid heartbeat and the butterflies in the tummy and automatically think those are negative aspects. It's very interesting. The physical experience of excitement and fear represent exactly the same. It's the emotion between the two which is the different. And again, we've spoken about the same thing in other layers today as well. But it's the reframe. That's all. Yeah.
What is the simplest way to identify good stress and bad stress?
The difference between the two words is the frequency, the amplitude, and the dosage. So what I mean by that is everything, if applied too much of, will become a bad stress, right? In the same way as we use that cold water example, right? So it's not that the act was bad. It was the amount of time he or she spent in the cold pool, which was a problem. It's the same way with an email. It's not that one email is bad. It's how many emails at what time. So
continuous stressors.
That's right.
Break you down.
That's right.
The body can't respond, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess the answer is...
So it's the dose, it's how often, so frequency, and it's whether you've allowed yourself the recovery phase before the dose is being applied to you again. Yeah.
Thank you so much for a fantastic and insightful podcast.
Thank you very much.